Well, last weekend we kicked off Thrive, and we talked about what it means to be rooted and established in love. It's really easy for us to find our identity in a number of different things, but Paul, speaking to this vibrant, upstart church in Ephesus, is telling them, find it. Stay rooted and established in love, in the love that God has for you. Now, the first 3 chapters of Ephesians is Paul's full throttle attempt to remind you of who you already are in Christ. 3 chapters of him telling you, this is who you are. This is who you really are. This is you. Now, you're made up of experiences, good, bad, struggles, pain, and beauty. You're made up of abilities, these gifts that have been uniquely wired in you, and a personality, the demeanor, the tone, the introvert, the extrovert, the humor, and this heart. What gets you passionate? What fires you up? What makes you come alive? This is you. And no one has ever walked this planet has your precise makeup. When you get to heaven, God is not going to ask you, why weren't you more like Moses? Why weren't you more like this person or that person? You know what he's going to ask you? Why weren't you more like you? The person I intended for this earth. See, the first 10 verses of Ephesians chapter 2 are rich in detail about the spiritual journey. For this vibrant young church in the heart of Ephesus, a 250,000 person city, Paul wants to both remind and unleash them for kingdom good. But he begins chapter 2 by taking them back and reminding them first of who they once were. Paul writes, as for you. Now imagine yourself in that house as this letter from Paul is being read. As for you, as for every living, breathing person in this room or watching online, Paul says, you were dead. There was no pulse, no vitality, no growth. You were the antithesis of thriving. You had stumbled far, far, far away from God. And even farther from home. This was your spiritual state. This was our spiritual state. Now, when I was in high school, we had this older woman who ran the scoreboard for our basketball team. And when I'd check in to enter the game, she'd always have something fun and snarky to say. I'd walk in, she'd look at me and go, you finally gonna show up and play now? Which was very encouraging. One time I remember she pulled me close and she said, come here. With all those bricks you've been shooting, I can add an extension to my house, thank you. I absolutely loved her. So snarky and so fun, but one day over Christmas break, she was out shopping and had a brain aneurysm. And she was taken to the hospital, transferred to the intensive care unit, and within a few days was pronounced dead. News spread quickly in our small town, and I found out the hospital that she was at, and I drove to it as quick as I could, and I actually snuck into ICU. I walked beside her bed, sat down, and just held her hand. She'd wanted to be an organ donor, so they were keeping her alive by machines. Wires. So many wires beeping to keep her breathing. And I didn't know that she had already passed. But for a good hour, I sat beside her, holding her hand, praying and reminiscing. She was dead, yet breathing. And this is the picture that Paul is painting, that each of us were the walking dead. Dead, yet breathing. Breathing, but far, far, far from home. Ephesians 1:1 says, as for you, you were dead in your trespasses and sins. I don't know about you, but every time I see one of those no trespassing signs, something inside me just wants to enter. Like, look at this sign right here. And a chain link fence, there's probably so much fun back there, isn't there? I mean, there's kind of clouds in the back. You're like, man, I bet there's such good stuff back there. And all through growing up, I'd see those signs, and it was like an invitation. Like, there's got to be more on the other side. I'd climb fences. I'd walk in. I'd go check it out. High school, the same thing. I mean, I'm curious about it. And the truth is, it takes us back to the garden because there was one massive no trespassing sign. And yet, for many of us, just like that first man and woman, we've often wondered, is God holding back? And found ourselves entering into places, not trusting God, but entering into different places. When I was in junior high, I played for a soccer team that represented the state of California in Great Britain. And we were sponsored by Virgin Airlines. Everywhere we went, we wore shirts that just said Virgin. I think the Brits were pranking us. Anyway, we happened to go to an event in London, and we got word that the Queen and the Duke would be coming. So I figured they would enter through a back entrance. So I saw the no trespassing sign, and I looked the other way. And I proceeded ahead. And then a motorcade pulled up, a whole bunch of SUVs, and then one nice car, which I knew had to be where the Queen was. And so I ran up to this nice looking Rolls Royce, and I had like one of those wind up cameras, remember those? I'm like winding it, and I go to take a picture of the Queen and am tackled by 4 security officers. But I got this great 45-degree angle picture of the Queen, which is awesome. It's amazing, Paul's saying, as for you, you were dead in your trespasses. Paul is saying that we wandered east of Eden, climbing over the chain link fence, neglecting the sign, and still proceeding ahead. We drifted into unfamiliar territory, and unlike the prodigal son who knew his way back, Paul simply states that we were stuck, finished, alone, wandering. We were dead, yet breathing. Now, what I want you to see is that in these first 10 verses of chapter 2, Paul is talking about the spiritual journey, and he begins by saying, this is who you were. You were dead. You were dead. This, my friends, is the plight of humanity without God. And right here, I guarantee you, many of you are starting to get a little squirrely. Defense mechanisms are kicking in. You're telling yourself, I'm not that bad. I grew up in church. My spouse is that bad, or some other family member. Definitely that coworker of mine. They've done some trespassing. Maybe a little bit I've done. I'm not that bad. I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good. And Paul says, not so fast. As for you, you were dead. Paul continues to say that all of us lived among them at one time, gratifying the cravings of our flesh and following its desires and thoughts. Like the rest, we were by nature deserving of wrath. See, we started delighting in trespassing. We filled our lives with the desires of our bodies. We took what we wanted, when we wanted, how we wanted, and we didn't even blink an eye. With every choice, we found ourselves farther and farther and farther from home. And because of this, Paul is saying we deserved to never be invited back. Is that you? Are there a place in your life that you find yourself trespassing, climbing fences, delighting in struggles and pain? Friends, what's that place, that thing, that secret that you've deliberately neglected the sign, climbed the fence, and in your heart, you know you're far from home, far from who you were created to be, far from who you want to be. You're dead, yet breathing. And Paul so brilliantly then flips the script. If these first couple of verses were to show us the plight of humanity without God, then these next few show us the privilege of humanity with God. Paul says, but Because of his great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ, even when we were dead in our trespasses. It is by grace you have been saved. Let me just tell you, friends, that the first 7 verses of chapter 2 are one gigantic run-on sentence, 104 words of Paul just emoting the journey of our existence. And what he's saying here in this powerful verse is, but you were dead, but because of his great love, God, who is rich in mercy, made a way. Made a way for you to be alive. In view of all of your trespasses, by grace, you can be saved. And what Paul's saying here is there is this beautiful reality of the cross. And because of that, you have the chance to be alive. And it all exists because of 2 words. 2 words that kind of Paul uses in that phrase. Underscore the entirety of the gospel, capturing the essence of God's character and showcasing what is possible. Those 2 words, but God. But because of his great love, God, in his rich mercy, made a way for you to be alive. See, as for you, as for me, we were dead. But God, as for you, as for me, many of us struggling with issues of control. But God, as for you, as for me, having addictions, hurts, habits, and hang-ups. But God, that is the gospel. That is the good news, that even though every one of us were dead, but God made us alive. I don't know about you, but that just gets me so fired up. But God, because of his unfathomable love, his wealth of mercy, he made us alive with Christ. He neglected the sign. He climbed the fence, and he found us. We are no longer the walking dead, and we have been invited to thrive. That's what I'm talking about. That's some good news, right? See, God's love pursued us even when we ran away. God's mercy saw us even when we were down and out and helpless. God's grace looked past it all and it liberated us. And Paul says it again, for it is by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not from yourselves, it is a gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. It's a gift. This whole movement is about nothing you did. No room for you to boast. It's all a gift. It's grace that found you, grace that saved you. It's all a gift of grace. But our culture is profoundly good at co-opting beautiful things about God to be about us, isn't it? See, during Paul's day, the Greeks and the Romans, they had all of these bizarre ideas about the gods. They had this thought that there were these gods, kind of like think fairies and Tinkerbell kind of things, that were out there. And these gods would almost send these kind of little fairies to kind of actually help you have happiness or help you with creativity. And the Greeks and the Romans had this word. It was called eudaimonia. And this word meant to be well-daemoned. A daemon was the name of these kind of fairy things. Now, Elizabeth Gilbert says this, that the Greeks and the Romans believed that their happiness was taken care of by some external daemon spirit guide, one for happiness, and they also believed that each person had an external spirit guide for creativity. Gilbert says that the Romans had a specific term for that helpful deity. They called it your genius. Your guardian deity, the conduit of your inspiration, which is to say the Romans didn't believe that an exceptionally gifted person was a genius. They believed that an exceptionally gifted person had a genius. It's interesting though, Because we now refer to each other as geniuses. My kid's a genius. I wish my kid was a genius. Wasn't that a genius idea? You are a genius. And I tell you this because we are so good at co-opting ideas and making ourselves the focal point all the time. Something in us wants to find a way to do the same thing with grace. And Paul is absolute in his resolve that we just can't do it. God knows if we could, we'd find a way to make it about us. And if we could, it would cease to be grace. The invitation is to simply just receive the gift that you are worth loving. This is who you are. But here's what happens. I meet a number of people who know this part of their story, and they meet Jesus, and there is this profound move of God. The hands are wide open. They receive this gift of grace, and then they just wait. They wait for heaven. They wait for the day that they can enter the gates. They wait for a life where they can be with God. And all they do is they keep this grace to themselves. And they talk about it. I've been saved by God's good grace. They sing about it, and it's very deeply personal to them, and it's beautiful, and they know who they once were. They know who they are. They are alive, and for many people, they believe that this is the end of the story. You have received it. Now wait till the day you die and enter heaven. That's not what Paul was teaching. See, Paul says, when you were dead, but God, and you were alive, and God has something so much more. He's like, but God doesn't even just stop there. There's more. There's way more. Look what the scriptures say, Ephesians 2:10. For we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. Workmanship is the word in Greek poema. And Paul is saying we are poetry on God's lips. Poema is the idea of a great poem, a great story. Words being strung together to tell a grand story. This is who you are. Other Bible translations will use words like handiwork or masterpiece. Walt Whitman declares, and your very flesh shall be a great poem. See, the idea is that Paul had this belief that there was like this vision 210. This idea that you were a masterpiece. And the truth is that many of us don't believe that is true. I think for many of us, we know, oh yeah, I was broken and fractured. There was so much sin and pain in my life. And then God, through the cross, wrecked my life, transformed me, made me alive, and we just stop there. And Paul's saying, no, you don't understand. You got more. You were saved by God's good grace. And you were saved for God's good work. You got stuff to do. You got to show the world what God is like, how God has wired and made you. You get to put on display how unique God is. You got to think about Ephesus. Everywhere you went were these massive sculptures, artists galore, sculptures being down every main road. Art was the language of that day. You think of a temple, Artemis's temple. It was the seventh wonder of the world. People showed up just to see it, and they looked at this building. They were captured and enamored, and Paul is saying, yeah, forget all that. You want to know what a masterpiece is? It's you. Ephesus has nothing on you. The Art Institute in Chicago has nothing on you. You in God's story are a masterpiece. And the truth is, we don't believe it. I mean, we believe in grace. And can you imagine if every one of us believed that we were a masterpiece in God's story? Can you imagine if we actually believed in the core of our being that God wired and made us for a reason, for such a time as this? There would not even be an empty seat in this room. There would be a group of people who were so enamored by Vision 2:10 that Paul was speaking to this church to actually go out there and shine, to let their lives be put on display, to not hold this grace inside, but to give it away in whatever they did. In the marketplace, in the schools, in the theater of that day, or in our day, it would be to shine and actually live into that masterpiece. See, to make this leap from alive to masterpiece, it requires trust. It requires trust. A trust and belief that you were made for something so much more. You might know this, but Hitler was an amazing artist. Amazing artist. He took his inheritance and he left Germany and he went to Vienna to study art. And he was good. He was really good. And when he graduated from Vienna, he had the chance to go and look at all of these blank canvases and create art. He was that renowned. But this amazing author by the name of Steven Pressfield, he actually wrote the movie The Legend of Bagger Vance. He says that it was easier for Hitler to start world wars than it was for him to face a blank canvas. Think about that. What's Pressfield saying? It was hard for Hitler to actually trust that he had some gifts. And so he went backwards in his story. And I think the same is true for many Christians I know. They don't trust that they are a masterpiece because of God. They don't trust it, and so what do? They return to being dead men and women walking, dead yet breathing, finding themselves just escaping and running, being controlled by fear, going back to habits and addictions. Last night, a number of people just came forward and said, "That's me. I don't actually trust and believe that I am God's masterpiece." And I imagine that many of you in this room, you're here, and maybe you've tasted, or you've heard that whisper, or you've read that verse, or you believe it a little bit, but I just want to tell you, that's who you are. And when you live like that, the entire kingdom wins. But I imagine that for some of you, you just don't know how. How do I move from being alive to actually taking my place as God's masterpiece in Christ Jesus, doing the things that He created in me, the good work in me to give away, that He's actually prepared in advance for me to do? And I want to tell you 3 ways. 3 ways in which you can make this profound movement from just being someone who has grace and has eternity to being someone who helps bring heaven here by putting God on display through the gifts He's given to you. 3 ways. The first one is this. Do you know your spiritual gift? I'm amazed at how many Christians just don't know their unique wiring. This coming Wednesday night, we are going to do a spiritual gifts class. Discover your spiritual gifts. If you don't know it, man, why wouldn't you show up and just learn? I love every time that Bill just gets up and he says, I only got 3 gifts: leadership, evangelism, and teaching. Because when you've got that kind of clarity, you know what you say yes to and you know what you say no to. When you can get that kind of printout that says, hey, we see this in you, and this in you, and this in you, and this in you, and we think that those gifts could best help build the church and build our community through this. And you get a chance to not just be someone who's alive with grace, but someone who gets to do good works. Please show up for that if you don't know what your spiritual gifts are. The second thing is this. Why I think Paul wants you to be aware of your past is because your past often can be something that God has redeemed and restored and made you an authority on that issue. And Bill's used the language, it can give you a holy discontent. Something that you see in the world that's just not right. And you go, I gotta do something about that. On Wednesday night, after the Lakeside message on midweek, a woman walks up to me and kind of grabs me by the shoulders and she said, for a number of years, I was married to a man that abused me, that literally beat me up. And I know that there are women in the Chicagoland area that are going through this. And you know what? God has just whispered this in me that he said, I want to take this pain in my story and so that I can do something to prevent other women from having to go through what I went through. And I just looked at her and I was like, you found your holy discontent. You found that 2:10 vision. You found why God is going to use your story to help bring good into this world. I sat with a guy on Tuesday at Chipotle, 70-some years old. He's had this crazy life. I mean, he's been to almost every continent, done incredible things, and for much of his life, he was actually against God, speaking against God, mocking Christians who were alive in grace. And then someone dragged him to Willow. And his life got turned upside down. And the last 3 years, his heart has just been expanding and expanding. And what he can do, better than most that I've ever seen, is sit with people who have massive doubts and listen to them. Not judge them, but he can remember when he was there. And all of a sudden, God's just been whispering to him, I think you need to write some of these stories down. And he just sat with me, going, I think I should do it. And I looked at him and I go, you better do it. You better do it. This is what God is inviting you into. But for many of us, we just get so nervous or scared. We think of this and we just hold on to it. And Paul's saying, don't be this. It's not going to change Ephesus. It won't change Chicagoland. Be this. Be this. Know your spiritual gift. Maybe it's a holy discontent that's going to allow you to put that master on display. Or maybe there's another way. There was this guy, his name was Marcus Buckingham. He came and spoke at the summit about 10 years ago. He's written a number of books on strength finding and knowing how to live into your strengths. And he did this little teach talking about the difference between what's a hobby and what is actually a calling. I thought it was really interesting. I love the game of ping pong. And he would use this kind of example of how do you know if you're supposed to do ping pong for a calling or it's just a hobby? He goes, you got to look for the signs. You got to listen and look for the sign. The sign's in an acronym. The first thing that you got to do is you got to see, do you have success in it? If you constantly lose in ping pong, it's a hobby. It ain't no calling. But are there things in your life that you do that just people are like, yeah, more of that. Keep doing that. You show up, you ask a question at your work, and it changes the trajectory of a decision. And then all of a sudden, they go, hey, can you lead that initiative? And you're like, what? Oh, okay. And you get up and you actually lead it, and it goes exceptionally well. And everyone's like, dude, that was amazing. You found success. You might just have the spiritual gift of leadership. And when you lean into that, something happens where you actually get to put the master on display. But if you don't have success in it, might be a sign that it ain't a spiritual gift. Now, second thing is, does it come instinctive? Is it something that's a part of you? It's natural. You get so excited about it. You somehow just know what to do. My cousin, ever since he was young, he was taking things apart and putting them back together. They'd walk into the garage, my aunt and uncle, and the lawnmower would just be taken apart. He's 8 years old, just taking it apart, putting it back together. Usually had less parts and it ran better. It was amazing. Fast forward a number of years, and he was encouraged in high school to work on all of my uncle's machineries in his construction business. Handled all of the vehicles. Goes into a profession where he is taking care of the buses in Grand Rapids, all of the diesel engines, so that kids can get to school and their buses don't break down. It was instinctive as a young child. I had a friend early on in her life, she'd start writing letters to Ronald Reagan, which is just awesome. And at 3 years old, her parents just encouraged her, keep writing those letters to Ronald Reagan. And she did. And all of a sudden, she graduated from college in Southern California. And when she graduated, she packed her car up and drove straight to Washington, D.C., where she did an internship at the White House. All because something was instinctive, something was inside her, and it was encouraged and drawn out. Thirdly, look for the sign where you start to grow. You do it, and your mind grows. You lose track of time. There's something in you that you just love to do. You want to learn more about it. You want to research more about it. It's just you. Look for that. And then lastly, does it fill a great need? There's a number of things that you can do with your gift. But does it fill a need to make this world better? See, what Paul was trying to tell these people was that you were once dead, but God made you alive by his grace. And the story doesn't stop there. You are a masterpiece, and you have so much to do here on this earth. The invitation is to get in the game, friends. And I just want to ask you today, where are you? Where are you? Maybe you stumbled in here today and you just find yourself in a story where you go, I'm just dead, yet breathing. It's amazing is a story of God. It says, I will come to you, rescue, redeem, restore you. I will make you alive. All you need to do is just open your heart to me. And maybe for some of you, that's the prayer you've got to say. A prayer that just simply says, God, I'm sorry for my part in this. And thank you for making me alive. Thank you for giving me another chance. And if you want more information on how to do that, I'd love to talk with you or people in our prayer room after service. But I imagine that there's a lot of you here stuck, holding on to grace, thinking that's the end of the story. And I pray that you will find your spiritual gift or that holy discontent, or you would listen to the signs of your life and you would begin to trust that you not only have grace, that you not only were saved by God's good grace, but that you were saved also for God's good work. And when you do that, you will taste and see what thriving is all about. Amen? Amen. Let's stand for closing prayer. If you want to put your hands out, I'd just love to give you a blessing. My heart is for people who are really exploring, searching, doubting, wrestling. If you're in this journey and you're like, I'm dead yet breathing, I'd love to talk with you. Like I said, we got people in our prayer room, they'd love to talk with you. Don't leave this place without hearing more about what God has done for you. Let's put our hands out. My brothers and sisters of Willow Creek Community Church, may you not just hold grace, but may you live into it. And may you trust that the God who found you and made you alive has something even more for you. May you see yourself not as the past, but may you see yourself as the master's piece, his art, prize, a gift to humanity. And may you live into that this week. Have a great, great week. Peace be with you. See you next weekend.